clarity gives you scalability. And so if you're going to grow and really optimize your tech, you need to step back and actually do this right. Set up your data right, make common business rules that everybody understands, and then you can present many, many different views quickly and easily and dynamically.
And we're going to talk with Jan Rippingdale, who's the CEO from Blue Banyan. They're NetSuite solution providers. Thanks very much for joining us, Jan.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. So let me tell everyone that we've known each other for some time now. Before we start our conversation about e-commerce, Jan, I want to share that from many people that I've met in this industry, I can strongly say that you are the person behind a company, CEO, that has one of the most strong purposes that I've heard in the industry. And I would like to start this conversation, if you can share about that purpose, telling us like why you do what you do.
So at Blue Banyan, we're interested in enhancing human well-being. That is actually our main bottom line. It is not transactional. It is actually that we want to help humanity. And we do that with making game-changing systemic shifts in industries. One of the key things that's relevant for e-commerce, for instance, is that fundamentally on a planet-wide basis, we have all of the resources we need to support everyone who's here and born today on our Earth. And what we don't have is an efficient way of allocating those resources and getting that down to and broadly accessible to everyone on the planet. And so a lot of these technology changes that we're making for e-commerce, specifically in specific use cases for each particular company, but we're doing this because we are learning about how to more efficiently allocate our resources so that we have a planet that is as close as this one as we can leave for our children. So that is where our goal is altogether. And we want this sense of human well-being to be shared, not just like, in the United States and the high consuming countries, but this should actually be a global human abundance that's available for everybody.
You're helping reduce scarcity, right? Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Scarcity is a mindset of the past.
Abundance. Let's think abundance.
Exactly, and it is abundant. We just didn't realize how to utilize the sunlight that's all around us as our abundant solution to where we're going. Similar, we can go into deep things on this, but I have a similar point of view about water. We can send people to the moon. We can absolutely desalinate water. 70% of our planet is water. So the resources that we have available are really available, but we need to get innovative and make some game-changing shifts. And we're intelligent. We can do this.
Yeah.
So we're just applying those. And we do have this have fun, make money, do good in that order as our core philosophy. So have fun is related to really being a connected team and psychological safety. And according to Google, it's the number one determinant and predictor of whether or not you've got a high-performance team is whether or not you have fun together and you feel connected, because that's where you get the creativity. Your brain is in the blue zone instead of the red zone. There's a whole bunch of science supporting this. It's happiness, like the happiness advantage, like Sean Anker. And that, all of that, we're taking that science and actually just enjoying our life, because I am not naive enough to think that my work is going to finish in my lifetime. So we are going to keep doing this for a long time to come. It's a marathon. And if you're not having fun along the way, you're not going to make it to the end goal. So you got to start with having fun. The more fun you have, the more money you make. You do need to have a business model where you're actually going to make money, and you need to think that through. Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 is one of my best books for evaluating whether or not you have a business model that's going to make money. And then you can do good, because the amount of good you can do is gated by how much money you can make, because that's going to be related to the amount of influence that you can have.
That's amazing.
So if you do them in that order, you're actually maximizing Doing good.
That's amazing to hear that. And actually, I also recommend Peter Thiel's Zero to One book to everyone. It can be life changing, like any other good book out there. So, Jan, let's go into e-commerce, right? Because let's talk about like how everyone that thinks about an e-commerce, they think about the front end, right? They think about the cart. They think about the looks, UX, a UI, functionality, features, etc., right? And that's where we come into play, right? Then of course we have strategy, etc. But there's something that you're bringing to our attention, right? That e-commerce starts from strategy, but from a strategy of how to implement and how to put your data and structure your data together within an ERP, right? And that is something that you really excel at doing. And I want you to share that with our audience because our audience are all e-commerce merchants. So I'm sure they don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know how they can scale their business, not just from their front end, but from their back end, from the ERP.
Hmm. So the biggest thing to understand about ERP is it is actually resource planning. So one of your resources is the amount of inventory you have and how well you can distribute that and get that where you're going, which absolutely matters in the e-commerce part. The other part might be what your customers are and what your items are, what's available to you. So all of these resources that are available, you're not always going to display them in different views. So if we apply information system analysis to business, you would actually have what's called a model view controller mental model. I love mental models. They really help me break down problems and think them through. So the model is where your data lays. The controller is what your business logic is, and the view is how you present it. So if you look at your e-commerce systems as a view, like maybe you've got a view for wholesalers that's different than your direct to consumer. And maybe you've got a view for a different set of products because you're doing the purple set of products, or something that's very specialized to a particular niche market. All of those views are excellent. And if you've set up your model correctly so that it can come down into the database using a common set of business rules in your controller, then your model view controller piece works on a regular basis. So you can view your e-commerce sites literally as different views of the same set of data. And that has been super helpful to me in explaining to execs why they want to take the time to do stuff that looks like upfront work in setting up your items in a specific way, and then setting up your business processes with a little bit more discipline, because you're not just anymore, you're not really just building one e-commerce site with one perspective on your items. You're actually going to want to be able to speak to many micro verticals and micro niches in your area and present different views of the same process. And if everyone on the back end knows that everything is running the same way, they know how to maintain everything, and you've got that consistency, then you've got clarity, and clarity gives you scalability. And so if you're going to grow and really optimize your tech, you need to step back and actually do this right. Set up your data right, make common business rules that everybody understands, and then you can present many, many different views quickly and easily and dynamically.
So it's basically like measure twice, cut once, right? Like make sure that everything is there. And what's the? It's really interesting how the approach that you have with your clients. Can you tell us like what's the process and how you guide your clients to set up their e-commerce? Like what are the type of questions? What's the kind of information that you need to start mapping, diagramming that out?
So almost always we start with actually naming the SKU, the item number. So if you can come up with a human readable way of naming your SKU that has a logic that works for your business, so that the variety and the differentiation are both captured, then you're able to display it better, customers understand it better, and everybody else starts to copy you, which sounds bad in kind of like old school business thinking, but in search engine optimized business thinking, it means that you are the source and you're the one setting the standard. So you get to be the thought leader about how that works. So usually we actually start by defining what it is that the SKU is going to be.
Is that what you call the item master?
It's literally the item master, and setting up that item master structure and taking the time to think through what's going to change For instance, are you going to be doing a lot of white colored or white collar deals, white label deals where you're going to package it differently? And so do you need to have a different SKU for different packaging because you're going to send out the Tesla specific, swag versus the, Blue Banyan specific swag or whatever it is that you're working on. And that's so you need to think a little bit about where you are now, how you got here, where you're going, and it there's a couple key things that you need to think about. One is that each set, if you're doing a data set, needs to be a complete, unique set. And what that means is that you've got values in that field that don't mix. Like you could never legitimately pick the wrong one. So if you've got colors and you just have a set of 7 colors, like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, like the rainbow colors, then you need to make sure that no one's ever going to confuse blue and indigo, right? I actually don't know the difference between blue and indigo. I could totally make that confusion. And so that's an example of not a great, complete, unique set. It needs to be done in such a way that you can tell what it is. Often in apparel, that's done with color codes and the numbering. But you'd actually put in what you need in the SKU so that you get that right every time and you're explicit and clear. Clear is kind, clear is effective, and then everybody else can troubleshoot as they go along as they're understanding what that is. So having a complete unique set is a key element. The other piece is that you have one field that has one fact. So you don't merge pieces of information. So if you've got something that's aftermarket, but you have 2 different pieces that could be aftermarket. You might have the aftermarket computer chip and you might have an aftermarket case for what it is that you're doing if you're, reselling computers. And you would actually put those in 2 separate fields because you would want to know if you have an aftermarket case or if you have aftermarket chips. Because you can have any combination. You can have an original case and an aftermarket chip. And so you don't want to mix and match.
Clarity again. So basically clarity, like you say, clarity is what allows scalability.
Exactly. And so every single time that it comes in, someone knows what to expect, the data that they're getting when they're looking at the specifics. Then they can troubleshoot and say, this was supposed to be purple and it came in and the system said it was supposed to be red and there is no red. Then you can stop it early enough that you can prevent downstream cascade effects that go on into the customer experience, and then you have to return it, and then you have to mess with all of that. So that clarity gives you the ability to catch problems much sooner, and it makes a huge difference in
And
your
Jan,
scalability.
what do you think, like, because it makes so much sense what you're explaining, and what do you think is the main reason why e-commerce merchants that use ERPs, right, like for instance NetSuite, don't go through that process? Is it that they don't know? Is it laziness? Does
So,
it take a lot
so
of work?
it takes a lot of work. The one field, one fact, and a complete unique set, those are super simple sounding rules. But when you actually look at the data, humans blend a lot in their own brains. And so they get used to it being blended. And so splitting it into specific facts that the computer's going to understand every single time helps the humans, but you have to unbraid, you have to a little bit unravel your blended thinking because humans simplify all the time.
Bias.
Literally, it's a closure bias. Yeah, like we just look at the bottom of a tire and we presume that the whole tire is there and the other side of the car looks right, even though we haven't looked at it, right?
Yeah.
And it is actually a bias and it's an assumption, and it serves us well. 99% of the time, that's true. But the 1% that it's not true, we totally miss. And that's why it takes some time. Is that you have to think a little bit differently about how you're going to solve this problem. So some part of it sounds clear, but there's some part of it that's a little not as intuitive as it seems like it should be.
And Jan, okay, so let's say you come into play with a client, you actually, I guess that you make them think about their business in a different way, right? Because to put that type of order, uh, I would imagine that that mental exercise will help unravel and and also generate internal discussions that maybe they didn't think about before, right? So okay, so that's a I guess that's a work that has to do with IT, but also with psychology, right? And human behavior, and take them, grabbing their hands and take them through a maybe unknown grounds for many. But
And
yeah,
so it's really important that you set up what the rules are so that they know when they're successful. By
okay,
saying that the rules are one field, one fact, and that you have a complete unique set, that they will know that when they're making suggestions that fit in those patterns, they're going to win. They're going to feel good and it's going to be great.
they're gonna have order,
They're
clarity.
going to have order, that it's not just arbitrary in saying that this is a good idea or this is not a good idea. It's got some basis for evaluating whether or
Objectively,
not it
you
meets the
can say
criteria.
objectively, we want here. Okay, and that's the first part, right? Because the game hasn't started yet. They might not even started selling a unit. That's like the basis, right? But then we people like Tabano come in, put together the site. Everything's looking great with a connected with the ERP. What follows? Because I know you're involved there in automations and optimization. So what follows? Like, okay, we just started. Let's move on.
Excellent. So that's the model, is getting this data right, and the item is the biggest part of that. The next one is the controller, and it has to do with your business logic. And the mental model here is called CRUD, which I know sounds terrible, but it stands for create, read, update, and delete. So you want to make sure that you are, and that is a complete unique set. So you want to make sure that every time you create an item, you know what's going to happen on the e-commerce site. And they need to be able to read the item. What happens when you update it? What flows over there and what doesn't? What happens if you delete an item and you decide that that was just a mistake and you don't want that anymore? How does that flow over to the e-commerce site? So by looking at your CRUD analysis on your items, your customers, your pricing, each of the different elements, what are you going to do with the sales order? What are you going to do with the returns? You are able to, if you do a CRUD analysis on each of those data tables and those objects, you do have, you've got a complete set of business rules that you can actually hang your hat on. You will have the clarity that you need to scale. Delete is obviously the one that people forget about the most. Update is super important, and people forget about that a lot too. What happens if you just update the photo because somebody did the wrong one? And if it's already pre-thought and it's built into your template, it's no big deal. But if it's not, and then you got to reload, and then you got to do this, then every time somebody makes a mistake, it's got like 2 hours of overhead, and you're just like, oh my god, people can't make mistakes anymore. They have to stop being humans, and then you like not having fun anymore.
I'm not making money.
So
Yeah, I'm not
you're not
I'm
making
not
money,
doing
right?
good.
And
Yeah,
people aren't feeling safe. So if you just design it right up front for all four situations, because there will be errors, then you've got a nice easy flow. So
and
that's how I know that the controller level is solid.
so the controller level is basically what allows you to modify the base, right? And to pivot moving forward, correct?
Right. So you might have the, in the model section, the data section, you'd have the core items, but then the controller says, I want this item to go
Okay,
to the consumer site, and I want this item going to the wholesale price site, but it's got a different price. And so the controller's got the business logic for everything about what you're moving into your different views.
perfect. And generally, like in any business, like who owns this process, right? Because you come in and you help, but who owns the process? And I also I'm asking this because I guess that there must be, like it always happens between sales and operations, marketing and operations. There's a natural uh, tension there, right? So who owns it, and who has the last word here? Because systems can change based on interests, right? Although the interest is the same for the company, they all want to uh, have fun, make money, and do good, right? Or maybe we can presume it in revenue. But like, yeah, who takes the risk?
So there's actually two questions there. There's a certain amount of data that has to be owned by operations, that has to work on the back end. You have to have it going to the right account. You have to have it getting fulfilled from the correct place. There's certain operational data that we actually suggest to be owned by an item master. We totally buy into the Jedi model that you should have somebody who knows everything about it. You should have two, not one, but you should have somebody who knows everything about the item and how it affects everything in operations, and that is set up right. And then there's another layer of data that's you really do need to be flexible about and allowed to be more dynamic. The sales data, the marketing data, they might be the same and they might be different. And it's okay to let marketing play. And maybe they make up a new category that's the spring collection of phone covers, or whatever it is that they want to do and play with and experiment. So there is a certain level of data that you should distribute and let them play with and make the views the way that they want to see and see if it's effective or not.
Kind of a common zone.
Because and that's what you're going to, but you just have to do it in a way that you've got guardrails around the operational data. The operational data needs to be sacredly managed. But the marketing data, you got to chill out and let people play.
Kind of,
And
kind of a data sandbox for the marketing guys to play around in a way.
exactly, but give them their own tab on their
Yeah.
own form so that they're not going to mess with anything operational. Don't let them see that. Put have guardrails. Be smart about it, but don't be so rigid that you're going to miss out on opportunities.
Cool. And it's really interesting, Jan. But I'm thinking, like, as we were talking, I'm thinking that okay, this is good for I would imagine someone who's just getting into e-commerce, right? But what happens with a long time merchant that has been doing things like they've always done, uh, their own things, outdated. The systems get to, and this is a term that I like a lot. Everything is like a hairball. Everything's mixed together. Like you start to unravel, but it's impossible. You want to go home, literally. So, what's the approach that you take there? Like, how do you solve it? How do you fix? One thing is to create from scratch, but how do you fix?
So the first thing is to recognize what is good about the existing system. There is some reason why they're still in business, right? And that things are working. And so you want to make sure that you're not just asking, when you do your gap analysis, you're not just asking what doesn't work, but you ask what does work, and that you identify and preserve that core. That also helps humans feel better about the work that they've done to date,
Yeah.
right? And then is there some way that you can get quick wins or steady wins? Like, I really think gamification and dopamine, like, the kids love it for a reason, right? It really helps if you can break down that elephant and get a win from end to end using the new model. Maybe you've got a new connector tool and it's got better error management. And you can actually see how that works and then do a proof of concept, have some wins, people get some buy-in and say, oh yeah, I do like that extra connector tool. And oh yes, I do need to learn how to use one other screen, but it would help me with these other things that I'm already spending my time on. Okay, now I believe you. And then you gradually shift to get a common tool set. But you're going to get that commonality and that scalability from people actually experiencing benefits. And so almost always you have to do an experiment. Like, don't show me, tell me, like, or maybe it is show me the money, right? It's like, show me the system, show me
Yeah.
how this works, show me it being successful, and then
You
I
want to
will
see
believe
it.
you and want to do the whole reworking. I see people throwing the baby out with the bathwater on a regular basis because they're just like, I spend 3 hours a day fixing this thing and I hate it. And then it's like, but you're not spending 20 hours a day fixing this other thing.
Yeah.
So
That's
let's,
optimization. Like what I'm hearing is like you're saying, okay, not everything is lost, right? Let's focus first on what works to then fix what doesn't work, right?
right. And getting clarity about what does work is often not nearly as obvious, right? Because you're like a fish in water saying, I swim, and water's just always there. But it isn't actually. When you switch to a new system, you can lose
Yeah,
something that was working
yeah.
before you get the new one. And so that's the piece that I caution against. Um, and as you do that, you also get a lot of buy-in from the existing teams.
And
Because,
it's good too because you have lots of you're a person that believes a lot in frameworks and you apply lots of frameworks, right? So actually you teach and you take your clients through those different frameworks and even mental models to understand like first the data and then their business or the other way around. But they start having clarity in their heads before having clarity in their systems, right?
E- Exactly. That is when they understand the that when they change the core data, it's going to affect their business rules, which is going to affect all of the different views of their e-commerce sites. It's a much simpler conversation about, okay, let's take some time to make sure the
Yeah.
center of this hub is right, because they naturally understand the implications. So my observation is the vast majority of people are really smart, and they're particularly smart about what they're spending their day job doing all day long. And so when I'm introducing technical concepts, and these are pretty technical, they're the the foundation of an information systems degree, right?
Yeah.
So they're fairly technical, but it can be understood. And when they understand it and they can work with it, it's like knowing how to fix your own bicycle or knowing how to cook your own food. You can actually get yourself what you need on a regular basis, and it feels so much better. It's very empowering. It's the resilience, it's the independence, the same thing that we're doing with renewable energy, because it brings us abundance of understanding and clarity into the next level of what they need to do to optimize their work.
Can you give us a little bit of a background also about how you were named Micro Vertical Solution Partner of the Year with NetSuite, and how does have to do with your solar practice, or if a spoiler?
Absolutely. So we've been named the Microvertical Partner of the Year for 2 years running. We have the largest microvertical. They actually started calling it a macro vertical at last Sweet World, and it is specifically for solar installers. So we believe that the key right now to making the energy transition is that we need to deploy more solar faster. And you can do this with general renewables, with wind and other things, but it's the solar that's going to really give you the distributed power that you have, so that we've got local resilience. Without local resilience and centralization, you end up with a lot of money behind, say, national wars, and you're still spilling blood for oil, for instance. And so using the solar and the renewables and what's abundantly available to all of us, the key to making that a reality so that everyone still can maintain their, current way of living and their education and communication and all these things that are actually really critical for humans' well-being, is to distribute that power so that it's local and resilient. So we have 25% in 2020, 25% of the solar installed in the United States, the residential solar installed in the United States, was done on the Solar Success platform.
25%. That's huge. Those are numbers.
And those are numbers, yeah. And the 2021 numbers are going to be higher, and they're not out yet. So we are absolutely changing, and so we're reducing the cost and hastening the timeline to get more solar distributed faster.
I love it, John, because you actually put such a strong why behind this business logic. Like that sound like, in a way, it sounds so cold, but it has such a strong support from that why, from that purpose that you have and that you share with your clients, that it's really admirable. So congratulations for that. So Jan, we're almost we're actually already in the end of this podcast. I You know already that we have lots of other things to touch on, and that this is not going to be the last one. It's just going to be the first one of our conversations. But I wanted to ask you if there's anything else that you want to share, or what do you think is the takeaway about, for people to understand that an e-commerce is not just a site.
So the main thing to understand when you're building the e-commerce systems and being more creative, I think, is understanding what's important and what you can be flexible about. And so knowing, where the data is absolutely immutable and it has to be done right, versus knowing where you can play and experiment, like, let both be true. So the main takeaway from this is that probably both sides of this question are correct. And if you've got a conflict, probably there's a place to have operational stringency and discipline, and there's a place to have marketing experimentation. So it's actually probably the main message, is that it is unlikely that one extreme or the other is correct all the time. So look for the both and solution anytime
Balance.
you can get it.
I love it. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jan. It's been an honor to have you. Please, can you remind our audience where they can get hold of you?
Sure. We have bluebanyan.com is our website, BLUBANYAN. You know, we didn't need that silent E, so we just let it go.
We're gonna share it in our description.
And so that would be great. And you can just, you know, email me at bluebanyan.com. It would be wonderful to hear.
Twitter, any social platform that you use?
I pretty much exclusively use LinkedIn. I
LinkedIn.
I
Beautiful.
Somebody was making fun of me today for not knowing my television shows. So I am pretty much a LinkedIn only social media person.
I love it. Well, thank you very much one more time, Jan. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, follow us on Spotify and all of our socials. And thanks for watching. I'm Diego Praderi, and this is The Link. Bye bye.
Thank you.